Welcome to the Oxford launch of the Senior Physical Education book for Units 3 and 4. Our expert team. My name is Ron Weatherby from Lockyer, Gatton, and been teaching for a long time. I'll just leave it at that. Bowled at QCAA for a long time at various levels. And my partner for today.
Yep, so I'm Kate Russell and I'm from Toowoomba, former head of Department of PE up there, and heavily immersed in this syllabus for the last few years, trying to unpack it and make sense of it. So I'm really excited to be here today, and this is a huge group, so thank you so much for coming to see what we have to say.
Yes, appreciate your support. Crystal, also from Toowoomba, and one of the good things, we did the book 2010, and we get together on a very regular basis every Wednesday night for the last 2 years, and we're getting together to talk about this stuff. Right, the only time we're not is for spouses, weddings and anniversaries, because we just got to make sure we keep that relationship continuing. We have... I was going to talk about our other authors. Monique Brennan and Wayne Gore, very experienced teachers. They were already writing on the ethics unit. Ben Williams, he wrote the toolkit for the first one there. So that's our team of 6. What is our purpose for today? We're going to look at these 4 sections. We're going to look at the overview of the assessment structure in senior PE. We're going to look at the assessment focus, and we're going to look at the tactical awareness section, which is your little booklet set there. We're going to look at how the Oxford text addresses and gives you the resources, and we'll talk about our philosophy behind that, what we've done in all of our sections to make it easier for you. That's our essential as our goal. What's going to make it easy for the teacher and consequently for the kids. Finally, questions and comments. Now, I'll address this one straight away. There's going to be some stuff here that you're going to say, hang on, I'm not too sure about that. That's something new to me, especially this dynamic system stuff. The writing team have put some new stuff in there, okay, which is great because it's about leading world-class syllabus, all this. So we've got to do cutting-edge stuff. We didn't know how cutting-edge it was going to be and how challenging to phys ed teachers, no matter if you're taught for 1, 2, or, like Bernie's case, 38 years. Let's have a look. Overview of assessment structure. Don't want to spend much time on this. You are all familiar with this one here. And we've got Units 3 and Units 4, Tactical Awareness and Ethics and Integrity, ex-phys for Unit 4. Let's move on with that. Righto. The assessments for Year 12. There we go there. There's 4 in Year 12. And if we click on these, you will see a pattern. In the first one, students devise a tactical strategy. They devise an ethical strategy. They devise a training strategy. QCAA, the writing team, were very smart. Every assessment task for the internal assessment is devising a strategy. Tactical, ethical and training strategy. So all of the assessment tasks follow a similar format. The 2 multimodals can follow a similar structure. And so we're going to unpack the structure for tactical awareness today, about devising a strategy, evaluating that, justifying that for your students.
So this is me. This is where we are going to start to look at one particular assessment piece in detail, to break it down, to figure out what we need to do. And we've chosen to do the one that's to do with the tactical awareness unit. And this is because this is one that we feel is probably going to confuse us the most, and it's also the one we have to do first. So there was a 2-pronged reason why we decided to do this. So the first thing to remember here is that this is just one way to approach this assessment task. This is what we came up with after writing the unit, after engaging with the syllabus, after going through breaking down all of the dot points that they have in the assessment task in the syllabus, matching it up with the exemplar, matching it up with the ISMG, and bridging the gap between going, okay, so what exactly do the students need to do to be able to answer that question and to get the top marks on the ISMG? And we feel like this particular structure sets those students up for the best success with that. It doesn't mean that you have to do it exactly this way. There are a variety of different ways that are not only possible to achieve the same outcome, but are also endorsable. So there are two sections to this, remembering this is our interpretation. So the first section is the multimodal presentation. So this is within the project folio for SIA1. 9 to 11 minutes. And within that multimodal presentation, there is part A. This is the devising, analysing, evaluating and justifying a personal tactical strategy. Part B is evaluating personal performance. They both need to be included. They are both separate things. There are two lots of evaluating, you will notice in there, but they are evaluating different things, and we will talk about that and unpack that further as we go through. And then finally, section 2 is the supporting evidence, your 2 to 3 minutes of personal performance footage. Okay, again, a separate thing. So there's a lot that students have to do in this task. And now we're going to go through part A. First of all, we will also cover the part B and section 2. So part A, we've broken up into devising, analysing, evaluating and justifying. So this is the part you've taught all of the information in the book. You've given them all the information on dynamic systems approach, constraints-led approach, dynamic systems theory, ecological model, dynamic models of learning, everything. And now this is their assessment of their understanding of those concepts. Okay, so this part of the multimodal presentation is probably going to be the bulkiest part, part A, because this is where they're essentially saying, yep, I understand tactical awareness. All right, and this is the only part of the project folio that relates directly to that content. The other two parts don't. So this task requires them to devise a personal tactical strategy. How do we do this? In the old system, and most of us are still thinking that this is probably what we would do, we would sit the students down and we'd say, or we'd put them in some games and we would analyse their performance. We would look for some problem areas in their performance, get them to self-evaluate, figure out where they've got some problems, and then we would say, okay, now come up with a strategy or devise a tactical strategy that's going to optimise your performance. Now we're going to go and put that into play. We're going to implement it, see how it goes, evaluate it, justify whether you would use it again or not, and they'd be on their way. Unfortunately, that is not the case for this particular assessment task. Devising a personal tactical strategy is very, very different in this particular, for this unit. So, I'm going to take you through how they've got to do it, and before we do, we need to figure out what is a personal tactical strategy. So, a personal tactical strategy is how the student or an individual performs a specialised movement sequence to solve a problem. And this is something that takes a long time to get your head around. So, Ron, if you could click on, I'm going to give you a few examples of what this might look like. So the QCAA, so they do a jump set.
The jump set.
The jump set task. Yeah. In this particular photo, we'll call this a student, and we can see that she's performing a set. So the specialised movement sequence that she's performing is a set for the sport of volleyball. And you can see that she's got a bit of a unique way of performing the set. Now we're going to assume that this is what her photo or her image would look like every time she performed a set, and that she's not just off balance because the ball came off to the side. So we're going to assume this is her every time. And you can see her leg is raised up here to the side. She has leapt off one foot. She's actually suspended in the air there. So the way she is performing that specialised movement sequence of a set is her personal tactical strategy, and she would have to describe that. Now, if we were then to look at maybe why this personal tactical strategy came about for her, you could assume, she's got some strapping on her knees. Maybe there's an injury there that is a learner constraint for her that has led to the emergence of the way she performs this set. Is it textbook?
So
Doesn't
you
matter.
wouldn't teach that technique. You're a volleyball player, so that's not the technique you would teach.
I would not teach that
All right.
technique, no.
That's cognitive systems when you teach the predetermined style that you want. Everyone is the same technique all the time.
Right. So she's got her own, and maybe her setting is spot on and she uses that and it works for her. So that her evaluation of her personal tactical strategy would be that, yes, this is an effective way of performing the set. And I would continue, or I would maintain use of this personal tactical strategy. If we look at the next one, sorry about the volleyball examples. There are more sport examples than just volleyball, but I don't know how it ended up like this. So again, we're doing the specialised movement sequence of a dig. A lot of our nutting this out, we had to go back to the sport that we were familiar with so that we could make sense of it. So she's performing a dig, and if I was teaching a student how to perform a dig, I always get them to get their body behind the ball and line up to make the most effective pass. Now clearly her arms are out to the side. They're not even joined together. Admittedly, the ball has come off, so she may have already made the pass and come away. And again, this would only be her personal tactical strategy if we could capture the same image several times. So it can't be a one-off. It can't be that she's just off balance here and this is just how she could best get the ball up. It's got to be that this is a regular pattern for her. It might be that a learner constraint of a vision occlusion means that by stepping away and passing from the side for this student is actually more effective for them. Getting in behind the ball makes them see it funny because their vision is a bit skewy. So again, it's about giving them the opportunity to develop their own technique that's right for them. And we have a role to play in this. It's not about throwing them on the court and getting them to flail away, and we'll talk about our role in a minute. But it's really important that they have a chance to develop their own, and you'll see why in a minute. So the last example I have is a touch example. Thank goodness there's something different here. So the specialised movement sequence that is being performed in this instant by the attacker is... Anyone know what the specialised movement sequence is? It's from the syllabus. Affecting the touch. Yep. So, and you can see here that this particular student is affecting the touch down low. And if you were to go back on this student's learning journey, you might see that in the beginning of the term, they were actually affecting the touch at shoulder height. The teacher put them through a bunch of constraints-led activities, and this student realised that it was actually more effective, he could play the ball much more quickly if affecting the touch was done down low and he was lower to the ground to put the ball down. And so his personal tactical strategy for the specialised movement sequence of affecting a touch, for the movement strategy of whatever it is for...
Roll ball.
For
Affecting
touch,
the touch
I don't
on
know
the ball.
touch so well.
There's also to the side too, which he might have worked out because he
Yeah.
wants the dummy half to scoop from dummy up. That might have been the instruction. How can you get the dummy half to scoop from the roll ball?
Yeah.
And he might have worked out, I've got to clear the ball, I go to the side, boom. Instead of the teacher saying, this is how you do it,
Yeah.
which is what we
So
like to
his
do.
personal tactical strategy is to affect the touch down low. Okay, so understanding the relationship in this upside down triangle might help us just solidify this idea. So we've got principles of play. Now these are your goals for the game. Setting up attack, defending against attack, creating space,
exploiting space, scoring.
No, that's something like. So
There's 5 of them.
there are 5 of them. They're in the syllabus. In order to achieve these goals, we use movement strategies. For example, this is straight from the syllabus, use front court setter to implement attack. In order to achieve the movement strategies, we use specialised movement sequences, the special skills that are specific to the game that they're playing. For example, a forward set. The foundational movement skills like footwork help us to carry out the specialised movement sequences. The way we do these specialised movement sequences is our tactical strategy. Okay, so hopefully that gets that clear in your mind. Devising the personal tactical strategy takes time and planning, and it's not something that we can sit the students down with before they have played and get them to come up with off the top of their head and then go out and try it. The strategy has to be allowed to emerge dynamically to honour the intent of the subject matter. It has to honour that, which is this idea that specialised movement sequences can emerge dynamically. And you'll see why in a minute. If we, as the teacher, tell the students what to do, says to little Johnny, you need to affect the touchdown low, you'll see why that's going to set him up to fail when it comes to the analysis and evaluation.
Kate, that was one of the biggest thing that we had to get our heads around, because I thought at one stage we were talking about affordances, the ecological dynamic system, seeing gaps in the play, attacking spots. When a defender comes through in touch, they turn their back, that's when you scoot from dummy half. If you see a gap of 5 metres in touch, that's when you dump and split. If you do a predetermined plan, that's not something emerging. All right, it's not something that is dynamically emerging. It's something that is predetermined. So that's been the biggest thing, because originally when I started to write this, I was looking at all situations in all those sports. Then you say, if you see this, do this. And that does not honour the integrity of this unit. So that was, for us, a huge change in thinking to come back to emerge dynamically.
Yeah.
And we'll take you through that.
So the theory behind it is, if you want to click on, that the body will self-organise. Have you all come across this idea of self-organisation? You may have touched on it briefly if you did Year 11, the motor learning in Term 1. And the idea is that the body will get itself into a stable position to be able to complete the task to the best of its ability, and it will do so in relation to the best way of doing it for the learner, in response to the task constraint, the game they're in, the environment, whether the sun's out, whether the wind is blowing a gale, and it dynamically changes. The body self-organises. If the wind is blowing and they've been training in a gym without ever experiencing that authentic environment, the student will still be able to adjust their technique on the field to be able to cater for the wind. But we need to give them the opportunity to experience that and to allow their body to dynamically change. If they're used to having a coach telling them everything, like how to hold your elbow, what angle to have your knee at, then they're going to be in this windy situation looking at the coach going, now what do I do? So it's really important that they get lots of time in authentic game environments for this unit.
So if you can control that weather pattern, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, right.
Everything else in schools, why not control the weather?
Now, so you might be thinking, so how the heck do I get them to devise this strategy then? If I can't sit them down with pen and paper, what do I do? And this is still not even we haven't even started the multimodal presentation yet. They still don't know what their personal tactical strategy is. So let's go through how they figure it out. Firstly, they need to figure out where the problems are in their performance. So they can do this through gameplay, use GPAIs. We've done up a bunch of GPAIs that might help you guys with this. If you can print them off the online resources that we have. And if you've all got a copy of the sample chapter. On page 44 and on, these steps that I'm taking you through now are included in the chapter, so the students will have this as well. They'll be able to read through. You can actually teach this as part of your unit development, and I think it's going to be an important part of it.
And having said that, you can make up your own GPAIs.
Oh, totally.
There is not just one. Whatever you want to get data, because it's all about data. Objective number 4.
Yes.
It's all about using data. So whatever you want to make up, get the kids to make up their own. It doesn't matter, as long as they're using something to identify their problem.
Right, so we've got an example in our book. It's a water polo player. So this water polo player is a goalkeeper, and he's identified that he has a performance problem of not being able to make a long pass. And in particular, this is affecting the ability of his team to set up an attack and have opportunity to score, because there's a task constraint of a 30-second shot clock in water polo. So by him making short passes out of the goal box, the ball's taking too long to get down the pool, and his team is running out of time to create an opportunity to score. So that's his performance problem. If we go to step 2, now he needs to participate in constraints-led activities to help him identify a movement solution that's going to bring about his personal tactical strategy to overcome this problem. Now, it can't be a matter of a teacher sitting there saying to him, this is what you need to do. We can't even really tell him that you need to make longer passes, because that's part of his decision making, because the applied principles of decision making feature heavily in this assessment task as well. And he needs to be able to have something to talk about when it comes to that analysis. Constraints-led activities are purposefully designed to shine a spotlight. This is how we've conceptualized it. It shines a spotlight on the movement solution you hope that the student will be able to come up with. So this is our role as teachers. We need to be able to design these activities, and we need to refine them and refine them and refine them. We know what it should look like. You know, we have all of that knowledge for our sports, but we just can't explicitly share it. We need to shine a spotlight on it by manipulating constraints, the task constraints, to make sure that they come up with it themselves. So in this particular water polo example, the teacher puts a task constraint on only
5 seconds.
I think it's only 2 seconds,
Oh,
I can't remember.
even more.
You've got 2 seconds to get the ball over the halfway line. So you can imagine then the kid goes into this constraints-led activity, he's got his performance analysis, he's got his GPAIs there, and he's taking more data on how this impacts his performance. And he starts by making short passes and saying to his teammates, quick, quick, get it down there. And his teammate just can't gather up that ball quickly enough, whistle blows, turnover, and the team's constantly losing. And so after a while, he's like, okay, I'm just going to have to do this myself. So here's his decision making coming in. I need to make a long pass. And I'm going to try and I'm going to fail, because I can't get that ball that far because I've never done it. And I'm doing my egg beater kick under the water, and I've got to get up. I've got to get up. How can I get up? I'm playing with it. My body's self-organising to try and get me out of the water. And eventually, for the specialised movement sequence of the egg beater kick, he applies a powerful burst or an explosive kick. And that gets his body out of the water, and he's now making that pass. And it's through immersion in authentic, constraints-led activities that this was able to emerge. If the 2 seconds meant that he could make the pass to his teammate, and his teammate was great and got it down there and it was, within 2 seconds, then I would be, after a little while, going, okay, we're changing that to 1 second, because you want him to make the long pass, okay? So that's where our role as the teacher in these constraints-led activities come in. We need to make sure that we are shining that spotlight on the movement solution without actually telling them what we want them to do.
You could tailor your constraints-led activities for different kids. You don't want every kid doing the egg beater kick, righto? So you've got a range of things for your students.
Yep.
Okay.
I've got a question about that. If you've got, let's say, 25 kids in your class and you've got 20 different problems in performance, how are you going to come up with 20 different...
No, you don't. Choose generic ones. Choose generic ones first.
Yes.
Otherwise you kill yourself. So we said at the start, just do generic ones, main problems, and then when the kids might be able to do it on their own.
Yeah.
Once they become more proficient.
You will find that like the generic ones will kind of wipe out half to 3/4 of the kids, because they'll all fit within those generic ones, and then there will be a few left that are just going, I can't figure out what is going on for me here. And that's where you can sit down with them and actually come up with a better, more tailored plan. Yeah. And I'll just get on that point of, the little Ralphie in the class that can't do anything. So
it's only swimming.
We've talked about this a little bit, and again conceptualise it with volleyball because it's our sport. And you've got the students, especially if you're doing volleyball, if they're not good at it, it's really obvious. And their personal tactical strategy might be to stand on the court and like, this might be it, you know. Is it effective? Probably not. Probably they're rarely going to get that ball to where it's going to need to get to, but that's not what they're being assessed on. They're not being assessed on how effective it is. They're being assessed on how did it come about, you know, and it could have been that they got a whole bunch of balls drilled at them and that was what came about after having these balls drilled at them for, you know, several sessions in a row. And this is just, now they have to talk about what task, environmental and learner constraints led to the development of going like this for the specialised movement sequence, or you could call that a set.
Yeah. Probably your lack of backhand in badminton would be a more typical one that you would see the kids trying to run around the backhand all the time. And so how effective is that? Could be effective against a lower player, but against better players it's ineffective. So that's what we're looking at, what emerges in their games, and they collect their data from that.
Yeah. And as long as they can analyse how it developed and evaluate whether it was effective or not, looking at some of the things Ron's going to talk about later, then they can still get an A on this assignment. Okay, that's what it comes down to. This is not linked to their personal performance marks. Their prac marks are totally different. So you can rest assured that the personal tactical strategy can indeed be exactly how they perform their specialised movement sequence, and it can suck, and that's okay. So the final step is to just describe what tactical strategy has emerged. Now we can start putting our multimodal together. Okay, so we've kind of reached week 3 or week 4 of the term. They've been going through this process of devising, and now they can write it down. Now they can start their analysis. So in their analysis, they need to look at the learner, the task, and the environmental constraints, as well as the applied principles of decision making, to figure out what led to the development of their tactical strategy for the specialised movement sequence for the movement strategy. Okay, it's a mouthful. It's a mouthful. It's just bizarre, these terminologies, but we've just got to become really comfortable with using them. And it's possible. It is possible to become used to that. So you can see, can we just go back to that slide? If I said to little Johnny in week 1, look, the water polo goalkeeper has to throw that ball long. To do that, you need to do a powerful egg beater kick, get your body out of the water. What's he going to say that what led to the development of the personal tactical strategy? My teacher told me to. How is that going to be insightful, and all of those descriptors from the ISMG? They're not going to be able to talk about those learner, task and environmental constraints because there were no opportunities for that to be developed. So it's really, really crucial that they are given this time.
Evaluating focus. Once they've done their strategy, they've now got to evaluate whether it's been effective or not. And that's what Kate was alluding to before. They might have an incorrect personal tactical strategy. That's all right. And it's the beautiful thing about this syllabus is it's not about how good you are in sport and getting over the line through your physical performance. It's about your knowledge of the theory behind it. 3 areas that they'll evaluate their tactical strategy: outcomes, limitations, and implications. Now, they are used across all the assessment strategies for devise a strategy across all 3 tasks in Year 12. So the language is the same. The syllabus writers have done a very good job with that. So the kids are familiar with this language.
Can I just point out too here, Ron, it's evaluating outcomes, limitations and implications of the learner, task, environmental constraints and applied principles of decision making. So it's even like one step more complicated. And it's important that when the students are doing this evaluation, they're actually saying these words, each of them, all 3 of them. They need to evaluate it in terms of outcomes, limitations and implications. All 3 words should be appearing either on their slides or in their voiceover. They should be saying it.
Appraising outcomes. Did the tactical strategy optimise their performance? That's the bottom line. So in the text, we step the kids through these processes for you. All right, so the kids can go through all of these.
For the water polo example, this water polo player might say, yeah, by doing a powerful egg beater kick, I was able to implement my long pass really well. So yes, it was it did optimise my performance. However, when I consider my applied principles of decision making, sometimes I made that long pass, but there wasn't even anyone there to take it. So my decision making wasn't always the best. So that's evaluating, and it's insightful, and it's deep, and it's rich.
And they can apply those 4 R's of decision making to help support that, because that's what they really want to do, justify it using those principles there. Implications. Did it affect other aspects of the game or create different new opportunities for them? The third quarter, they're gone. They're so tired doing that powerful egg beater kick, they cannot throw that ball any further. They keep throwing to the wrong person or their teammates from swimming up that pool so much. Maybe that's no good. So we've got implications. Does it change their strategy when they start getting tired? Does it change?
So I would say that getting tired in the third quarter probably a limitation. An implication might be as he rises out of the water, he notices through perception action coupling, which is one of the terms that they need to be referring to as well from the text, which is the process of I perceive. So I see that I need to make a long pass, I act, I do my powerful egg beater kick, I get out of the water, and I further perceive, through acting, I further perceive that actually the goalkeeper has come out of their box and the goal is free, and now I'm going to act and make the shot. And so a surprising implication of me being able to do this personal tactical strategy was now that I can make a shot from goal into the other goalkeeper's box.
Which is not part of their...
That wasn't
plan.
part of the plan to begin with. It's an additional implication of that personal tactical strategy.
So they're the 3.
Yeah.
Outcomes, implications, opportunities there, and how their strategy might change, what happens to them. So do they start making shorter passes? Do they become less effective? And that's just a fatigue aspect there of their technique.
Another limitation might be the task constraint of their teammates and the ability to support by getting up the pool to get that long pass. They might have a bunch of really slow swimmers in their team and there's just no one getting back there. And so that would be a limitation of a task constraint.
Justifying. And again, as we had the 3 before, we got maintained, further developed and modified. So they've got to justify what they're going to do in the future situations. It says there they've got to make reference to the principles that underpin that. If they're going to talk about maintain, what other principle are they going to talk about to say, I'm going to maintain this strategy? Is it the ecological one?
And this should be woven through the whole multimodal. Their whole story should be woven in with the concepts from the tactical awareness chapter. Is that what you were...
I was about to say, because we've got all that stuff there, attunement, perception, action, coupling. That's where that language in the ICMGs that says you've got to make reference to them, the kids have to use that language. Right, so that's what we've got that there. If they're going to justify it, make sure they link that through the concept. So again, we're not talking about their performance or the 2 to 3 minutes final stuff. We're not talking about body movement concepts at all. We're talking about the tactical awareness theory and how it impacted on the emergence of their tactical strategy.
Yeah. And it's really important here too. We don't want to have 5 slides in a row. What is perception action coupling? What is attunement? What are affordances? These should organically come out as they tell their story, and specifically or particularly if you follow these methods that we have suggested, they should be able to weave this theory into their story. So all of the constraints should just come out and their understanding of it. They don't really need to, they might add in their understanding of it as part of their explanation, but we don't want it to be standalone slides of Acquire, the old Acquire, what we're used to students doing. So really keep trying to drum into them. Tell your story, weave the concepts throughout.
evaluating the personal performance. This is the second part. That's what I thought I was jumping in, to be honest, but that's all right.
Sorry.
Evaluating the person. This is part B. Righto? This is where we are starting to look at the body and movement concepts. Righto? They're not in part A. That's a personal tactical strategy. We're now talking about evaluating the personal performance.
And we're still in the multimodal presentation.
That 9 to 11 minutes.
Yeah. So this is a part of it. It's in the ISMG. If they don't do this part, they will not get a considerable amount of marks, and they will definitely not be able to get above I think it's a C.
About that.
So it's crucial that we have these separated out like this.
2 body movement concepts to evaluate their physical performance. Now, on page 51, we have that highlighted for you. We have got a sheet showed out there so the kids can go to 2 different principles of play.
It has to be 2. If they only do 1, the
They
most
lose
they
marks.
can get out of 7 is 3.
They lose marks.
So they have to do 2 principles of
2
play.
principles of play. 2 body and movement concepts, quality of movement and one other. And they've got to justify their physical performance using the body and movement concepts and how they've performed there, how they've improved, how they've been accurate. The quality of movement, the speed, the performance. Righto? If you choose relationships, where are they in regards to the other players? Whether it's a body awareness, are they aware of where they're standing when they're playing their badminton shot? Are they standing with it when they reach in for the ball? Are they off balance when they reach? They fall over? How are they being stable to make the performance? So they analyse their performance here. Now, they could actually show you where they're at their worst. We're not giving them marks on their physical performance here. If they want to work strategically or tactically, then they might show where they're not applying the body movement concepts very well, so they can show an understanding of the body movement concepts. So maybe if they are very ordinary, with their backhand it's like this, they might want to talk about relationships where they're missing the shuttlecock all the time, how they've got to actually give themselves some space so they can swing freely with that backhand, rather than always hitting it under here. Or the position of their feet. If they're side by side instead of front on when they're going for a smash, if they're not getting side on, that they can actually get into what they need to do to be better. Right, their positioning on the court. If you're using doubles, their positioning with their partner in relation to how they cover the court. So that's where they can talk about this. They go through a diary, they annotate it, they can work out exactly what footage they want to show. Because they've got to get the footage to support it, because they are evaluating their personal performance. It's in that objective 7. There's 2 dot points on an ISMG. Right? And this one is purely about evaluate your personal performance. Right? So that's where, going through this process.
So what I would be doing with my class is getting the blank template of this planning document, which automatically, if they fill out the whole thing, automatically they've covered 2 principles of play and 2 body and movement concepts. So that ticks those boxes. It makes them look for the criteria. If they're doing, they have to do quality of movement, so we've got the criteria listed there. Speed and accuracy
effort,
and
force, fluency, flow, off the top of my head.
They can give themselves a rating. We've got them listed, and that's terminology straight from the ISMGs, accomplished and proficient, effective, etc. Then they can say, well, what evident criteria backs up my evaluation? And now finally, what footage, as Ron was saying, what examples can I show from my sport that proves that I am accurate, that I have speed? What am I specifically looking for? And then they can go and find it.
Or lack it.
Or they can get
Or
out
lack
there and try and do
thereof.
it. Yeah, they could show a lack of.
Yeah.
So they need to be able to show some insightful evaluations here. And this document will be the student's best friend.
Now, please don't ask us how much time do you recommend to set aside for Part B, because I don't want to be held accountable.
There is
Look,
no guidelines.
there are no
for that.
guidelines, and to be brutally honest, no one's gone through this yet. we've got a QCAA exemplar that you'll all be going through, and it's annotated and stuff like that, but we don't know yet how it's going to work for us until we actually go through this next year. We would suggest 2 to 3 minutes, because most of the time should be on that tactile, because that's where most of the ISMG marks are. All right? Develop that one movement
And they
strategy.
have so much more to cover, so much more to demonstrate that understanding of all those concepts.
So
It does make sense to bias it towards Part A, but to leave themselves enough time to get Part B in, or no matter how good their Part A is, if they don't have Part B, they cannot do well.
one of the things we have done in the text for students is an exemplar. Because I hate trying to come up with an exemplar for my kids, because you've always got to have that according to your principles. Always show that exemplar, A and C. Well, you work out if it's an A or C, it doesn't really matter, but it just gives the kids an idea of what they're looking for with the language that they can put straight into their multimodal.
All right,
Last
last
one.
one.
That 2 to 3 minutes, it is not part of the 9 to 11 minutes. Here's where I think, because I'll put my hand up,
Yes.
I put my hand up and I did not want physical performance in this new syllabus to be assessed. I was one of the ones that was pushing it quite heavily, because I could see the situation where we're flat out now getting A and C for 2 physical performances that are of a decent standard. That's the teachers. Being on panel and go through state, we see some pretty shocking ones. Righto, they get through. So for the teacher to be doing it for 10, 15, 20 for every kid for 2 physical performances, I thought would kill the teacher with a new subject. So the strategy to get over that is put it onto the kid. Put it onto the kid. Get them starting year 11 if you want, because if they get injured, they can still have evidence. And it's like that American NFL pick me stuff. Show me you're at your greatest. I might not have seen that in class, but at the moment we've got to see consistently successful performance in class. It doesn't say that in the new syllabus. It says proficient demonstration. So if someone said to me the other day, I've sent a video camera with my netball girls, fine. It's out of class. I don't care, mate. Get them to show themselves performing. And in grade 11, get them used to trying to highlight their, put a bib on them. You can share your resources by all means. It doesn't have to be all different, but there's strategies, and Crystal on the O-Book stuff talks about strategies to get that video stuff there. We'll work smarter as we go through this process. The first year will be pretty ordinary, no doubt, but we will get better at it. But put it on to the kids to do that highlights reel.
One thing with this is it has the same requirements as the evaluating of their personal performance in their multimodal. So it's still got to show 2 principles of play, and it's still got to have demonstration of 2 of the body and movement concepts, quality of movement, and 1 other. So,
And no commentary.
And no commentary. But working smart, you could actually, if you feel like your students are going to struggle with the extent of this task, it's a big task, then get their evaluation for Part B, if you can, to mirror this. So if you can get them to show the best of their performance and evaluate themselves as high as possible, and they can still be insightful, then that's going to reduce their workload. Otherwise, they're going to have to do this pretty much the same task twice. You're giving them the same table to go through the exact same process. At least in the evaluating personal performance one, they are allowed to talk over and they can explain it. But in this one, it's just got to illustrate the concepts for themselves. Like, it has to just show it for themselves. There was talk at the workshop yesterday that it might be okay to just put in some annotation at the bottom of slides of videos, like they've done in the exemplar on the QCAA. But it's so brief. It's like, this is showing body and movement concept, quality of movement.
And we'll find out more once we start implementing it.
Principle of play,
We'll
setting
find
up
out
an
more.
attack, or whatever. That's all that you can say. You can't talk about why this is a principle of play, setting up attack, and why it's accomplished and proficient or whatever. It just has to speak for itself.
Yeah, I think that'll change. Well, whoever's going to be marking those will be going, well, I can't see it.
Yeah.
And it's just like our videos now. You talk up more if it's an ordinary video, don't you? You start saying how good they are when it's an ordinary video.
Yeah.
Righto, next one there.
All right, so that's the end of the assessment task. You can take a deep breath. let's go through the features of the book, hey? So we've got at the beginning, and for those of you who's already using it, you've probably seen, we have a toolkit chapter at the beginning of the book. This has assessment task guidance, so how to complete a multimodal presentation in a general term. What we've just gone through, the more specific things, is at the end of every single chapter. So every topic has a step-by-step how to complete the task in specifically. Also in the toolkit there are general, like the art of study kind of tips in there. There's some careers stuff, some more general. It goes through the cognitive verbs that the students will need to know for their external exam. We have subject matter at the beginning of every chapter. So I should mention that we have one chapter for each topic. So there is a tactical awareness chapter, there is an ethics chapter, and there is an exercise physiology or energy, fitness and training chapter. That's a big one. And so everything is neatly bundled. And at the beginning of every chapter, we have the syllabus grid of subject matter and where each of the subject matter is covered, what pages are covering it, so that you can be sure that there is complete syllabus coverage. And that's especially important for the external exam stuff. The section-based approach is really important because this breaks that topic, so it breaks tactical awareness up into manageable chunks. There are no more than 2 to 10 pages. The average is about 8. And they're almost like nice, neat lessons. And actually for each of the section, we've also written lesson plans, links to websites with activities to do with the websites. There are videos, etc.
Objectives, you've got to put those up on the board every time you teach nowadays, so it's already written out for you.
Objectives are done. At the end of every section, there are questions that go through the stages of inquiry. So we have engage and understand, then we have apply and analyse, and evaluate and justify. And we also make sure we use the Mazzano words and we bold those Mazzano verbs every time so that the students can start to become familiar with those.
So if there's 7 sections, there's 7 lots of questions. And we get in trouble if we only try to give out 4 or 5 questions. So there's 5, 6, 7. All right, so there's quite a lot of questions for your kids, especially for the external exam. The more practice they can get at all those things there, those questions.
Throughout each of the sections there are study tips. These are not general study tips like make sure you eat a big breakfast before you go to your exam. They are very, very subject-specific study tips and specific to the stuff that they're learning in that section. So it might be something like, I don't know what that one there
Develop an acronym to remember the stages of learning.
Yeah. Or it could be, you'll need to know the body and movement concepts. We covered this in Year 11. Please go back to section whatever from the Year 11 text, which they can all access on digital, even if they've handed their text back.
Have you got enough video footage yet? You know, just remind them, stuff like that.
How to store. Make sure that you set up folders now to store your videos, because you'll need to do that. Yeah. So all very specific. We've got the fun for the records for those kids that really struggle with the heavy content. It breaks it up, just makes something quirky about the subject matter that they're learning. And this is new to the Units 3 and 4 book, so we have these real life examples or models, and that water polo example is exactly what I'm talking about. So we've got them highlighted, and this example of the water polo player goes through that whole section on assessment so that the students can see clearly the development that they're going to need to go through, and it's written in student speak.
And we try to choose an activity that not a lot are going to be using.
Okay, finally at the end of every chapter we do a full review in dot points. We have an external exam style questions, so 10 multi-choice, 2 short response and an extended response. You can set that as an exam if you like. It's in the book though.
And we'll have answers on the oval.
There are answers to all questions and all exams. And there's also a sample assessment task at the end of every chapter. Just note these can't be endorsed because we've not gone through the process yet, but they
Yes.
will be as endorsable as possible. There are 3 people on our author team that have done the endorser training, so they should know what they're looking for. And we will have a big stamp across it though that basically says this has not been endorsed. You can use it, you can tweak it however you like. It'll all be presented to you in a way that you can download it to Word and play with it, so you don't have to use it exactly verbatim. You can change whatever you like. Make
But
it however.
to be honest, it'll be pretty bloody good. It'll be pretty close to it. In each of our assessment, each of our chapters, we have assessment support. We take you through those steps that we went through today for the whole assessment task. So we step you through. That's a brand new thing we've done this year.
Yeah.
And we'll have a common theme running through the sample. So it's a whole chapter dedicated to the project folio for tactical awareness. There's a whole chapter dedicated to the ethical strategy, a whole chapter to the training strategy.
Section
So
within the chapter.
section within the chapter. And then there's questions as well at the end of those chapters. So we're trying to give you as much and your kids as much support as we can. So it's in one section there. Within those ones there, we have our skill drills, which is the integrated approach. And the great thing about the skill drills, if you can't use them, you know they're for data collection. That's essentially what they're for, data collection for the students. Right? Because they need that for Objective 4 to justify whatever they're doing to help analyse and make changes. So their skill drills, they'll be at the back of the book, they'll be identified. It's on devising a personal tactical strategy, turn to page, blah, blah, blah. That's where the kids will find them all in the back there with everything that you need to set it up. Right? Same formula all the time. Here's something brand new, because we've never had an external exam. Not even when I went to grade 12, and some of you think that's a long time ago, I didn't go through the external exam process. Anyway, at the end of SA3 being turned up, there's about 8 weeks before the external exam. Schools down south have found that students disengage in that time. So we thought, 8 weeks, what can we do for 8 weeks? Well, why don't we do XFIS, 8 different topics. And each week we'll give another topic. We'll review those topics. We'll go back to those topics. Right? So each week there is some review of some content. Then we'll go through a skill drill. And then we'll go through some more exam type questions. Now, when we're talking about exercise physiology, that one there, you don't have to cover all of the subject matter for your assessment task. I'm not. I'm just focusing on the ATP-PC system. That's why I'm doing track and field, and it's going to be explosive events. So I can just focus on ATP-PC system, that part of periodisation, get them to do their assessment task, and then when I come back to this, by the way, folks, there's another 2 energy systems. Let's have a look at the lactic acid system. That's for this week, and get them ready for that exam. If you're doing a team sport, well then you're going to be doing all 3 energy systems. And it might take an extra 2 weeks before you can start getting that assessment task done. It's just one of the ways that I'm thinking of in the future to have less stress. But this 8 weeks, if you only get 6 weeks, then that's fine. There's plenty of work in there to keep your students engaged and ready for the assessment task. This is a brand new thing. It's great.
There's a practice exam for the end of every section. So if there's a section on energy systems 1 week, then the practice exam at the end is only on energy systems. But it's set up exactly like the external exam will be set up. So 10 multi-choice, 2 short response, and an extended response just on energy systems. And then the same the following week. So we've written 8 practice exams.
Feels
So
like we're selling
those are
something, but
not-
wait, you get more. That's a lot.
The practice exam is not in the book either, so you can actually set it as an exam for the students. They won't have seen it. So it'll be on the teacher resources on the digital platform.
We think that's a really good thing to take the pressure off you in those last 8 weeks. Here's another thing. Crystal
Yeah,
here
we've been meeting for
made
the last-
all these videos up to take the kids through that one there
They're a
and
lot.
show the
They're
kids.
great. They're really well done. Has anyone seen those?
Yeah.
They're really good. Yeah, and you can actually assign, like if you don't want the whole class to watch it, but you've got a student who's struggling, you can go onto your digital and you can send individual students the videos through the platform. So you can assign work. You can say, I want you to just watch this and make some notes on blah, blah, blah. And that's good for your students that are away as well. We're doing this week, watch this video, answer these questions. You can do it all through the platform once you've got your class set up.